Yeah, so as we've all now seen, Ollie conducted an interview yesterday which was done at the front of his house, which the AFL have obviously spoken to us about overnight. They'll want to talk to Ollie at some point during the day. Ollie needs to own the fact that it happened, and whatever happens from here will obviously happen.
What has he broken in terms of protocol?
Well, the protocol is that you shouldn't be inviting people to your home who basically don't live at your home through this period. So, despite the fact that the media organisation didn't go into his house, they did interview him at the front of his house, and that's the breach. It's not a breach of social distancing or anything like that, but it's certainly a breach of what the AFL have put out so far. In that, as I say, ordinarily people shouldn't be inviting people who don't live at their house to their house.
So could he miss Saturday's match?
Well, look, selection's been done from our perspective. Whatever happens here from an AFL standpoint, sanction standpoint, will obviously unfold either today or tomorrow. We'll have to be mindful of that and plan for any sort of contingencies that we need.
What are the possible penalties?
Now they're part of the AFL's rules. The AFL have the ability to sanction a player in whichever way they see fit. So. As I say, that will unfold over the remainder of the day. As you all know, we've got to lodge our team tonight. We did selection earlier in the week, and we'll go from there. Yep. We made the call, yes, but the AFL certainly supported the fact that, in their view, what needs to happen from here is that Ollie needs to have a coronavirus test, as we all need to have at some point today before the weekend. So Ollie will have that test. He's probably having that test right now off site, and won't be allowed back until that test result comes back into the club, which will most likely be tomorrow. Exactly right. I think it's reasonable to suggest that the AFL's view with all of these, minor protocol breaches will be that as a first course of action, they need to, whoever it is that's breached the protocol needs to have that test, and for that to come back in a negative fashion for them to be able to resume their normal function from a training perspective, and it highlights the fact that it will have an impact on whoever it is that actually breaches the protocols. Whether Ollie is playing or not on the weekend, not being able to train today is a significant impact for both the individual and also the team. Well, he knew once we had told he look, this is an inadvertent thing that's happened, but clearly it's happened, and Ollie will own it, as we need to do as a club. Look, he's disappointed. As I think is understandable in this situation. No player doesn't want to be training because they've made a mistake like Ollie did yesterday. But the reality is he's not out there right now, and he won't be back until we and the AFL are satisfied that he's doesn't have anything that is going to impact on anyone else.
I know rules are rules, but do you feel like it's a bit unfair that players are held to a higher account?
No, I don't. That's been clear from minute one. We know that to get the season back underway, we needed to be held to a higher account. In this situation, we have failed to live up to that account. We've got to own it. In effect, they're either financial sanctions or they're suspension of games. Whatever the AFL come up with from here, they'll come up with. They've obviously made some decisions previously, which in some ways set a precedent. But the reality is we'll find that out either later on today or tomorrow, I imagine.
Where
where does the responsibility lie in this situation for ensuring these rules are met? Is it the broadcaster? Is it the player? Is it the club? I guess, where does the responsibility lie?
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a personal deal that Ollie has with that particular news organisation. The reality is, though, is that the club was aware that the interview was going to happen, and so we could have been clearer in terms of knowing where that should have occurred. But ultimately, in this situation, Ollie should have known what the protocols are, and so this situation should have been avoided. But at the end of the day, this is one of those situations where we constantly tell media that we need to control what we can control, and this was something that we could have done a whole heap better, and I'm sure Ollie will put his hand up and say that as well.
You knew it was happening, you just didn't know exactly where it's house?
Yeah, the club knew it was happening. Yeah, that's right, but had assumed that it would be done in line with the protocols, as as I think is reasonable given the circumstances. But it's obvious that we're all going to need to have a heightened awareness of what these types of situations have the potential to lead into.
So it would have been fine if they just walked out the front gate and stood on the street?
No, it would have been fine if it was done here. So the reality is that it should have been done at the club or over the various social media, Zoom, WebEx type platforms that we've all become used to over the last 3 or 4 months. If it had been done either here or through those, there would have been no issue. The fact that it was done out the front of Ollie's house is the issue.
So are there any issues with Tom Rockcliffe and Xavier Dersma doing a story on 7:30 last night? I don't think they were at the club.
Yeah, no, so the AFL have approved that particular thing's happening.
What's the difference there?
Yeah, it's a good question, but outside of the fact that those types of situations, when they're managed appropriately and in line with what's already been put to the AFL, those situations are far more managed by the club, and I think that's ultimately what the AFL actually want to make sure happens.
Does the broadcast team have to be tested as well?
Look, I'm not sure. You'll have to ask the news organisation in question.
Will he be allowed to go to the golf course?
Look, I imagine he will. Without wanting to get into whatever penalty the AFL may actually apply in this situation, I think the relative health risks in this situation are no greater than a player going to a supermarket. But at the same time, we also understand that it's a breach, and so. I think ultimately, we need to deal with, and the AFL will need to deal with what's in front of them and make whatever assessment of the situation that they want to make.
Do you see big holes in the AFL's COVID policy, interactions with media and other things? Do you see big holes in it?
Look, I think with where we're at right now, there are parts of the policy that are going to need to be worked through practically. But that doesn't dismiss the fact that in this situation, it could have been handled better. So it's not really for me to make assessments on what is and isn't working as part of the policy right now, because we are clear in the fact that this situation could have been handled better.
Do you get to make a representation to the AFL about penalty, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we'll be involved in the discussion today with Ollie and the AFL, and we'll make representation in the best regard we possibly can to make sure that the circumstances around it are mitigated. But ultimately, as I say, we're not trying to shift blame here. This is something that we could have done better.
Do you feel that you might be made an example of?
No, look, as I say, I can't imagine that the AFL need to make examples of anyone. The fact that there's 15 people here right now makes a fair example of, and the discussion that's happened overnight. I can't imagine Ollie's enjoying it. So I think for any player and the rest of this mob out here, they get a clear message across the competition of what is appropriate and what's going to generate some unwanted headlines at a time that, let's face it, we all should be talking about a fantastic game on the weekend. Sorry? Well, teams come out later on today, so you'll find out then.
this all great on LECB? You can't seem to take a
Does this what, sorry? Oh, as I say, Max, I can't imagine that Ollie's happy with where this situation is at right now. I think it would be unfair to say anything other than this situation is unwanted exposure that a bloke who's trying to get back and get his footy back on track would want to avoid.
Just a couple on the game. Are you still on track to Gold Coast on Mondays?
No, we won't be going until probably next Friday. But we've got a pretty big game this weekend, Tom, that we would like to be focusing on first before we start packing the sunscreen, mate.
And just on that, good to have footy back.
It's amazing to have footy back, isn't it? I mean, I've missed you all. From that perspective, it's nice to see all your smiling faces. And to have the opportunity to get back out doing what we all love to be involved in, to provide football fans across Australia with something to watch in what's been a really tough period, I think, for the country and us all. It's a fantastic thing to think it's starting tonight, and for us to be able to have a good performance on Saturday night against our crosstown rival is going to be a really good thing in our prison bars. There's not much better, mate. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think they'll get through, but yeah, I mean, typically the team is selected subject to the guys getting through the remainder of the week. The people that you've been most interested in Lycett, Dersma, Georgiades, they'll be part of training today. I'd be surprised if all of those guys don't get through. But as we say, there's potential for things to change in the next 5 or 6 hours with everything that we're talking about here as well. So.
And Robbie, obviously, puts
100% might be a stretch, but he's going to play. He's not showing any sort of ill effects of it. Now, how he feels, I guess, is something that he'll have to work through. But he right now, Tom, is a definite starter.